one thing that's really important to keep in mind for yourself, and I find myself needing a reminder of this from time to time, is that the cost and the quality of the gear does not necessarily represent the quality of the final product. Whether it's cheap gear, that doesn't mean that it's going to be a cheap final result. And whether it's expensive gear, that doesn't mean it's going to be a high quality end result. Now, you see examples of this all the time. People shooting with the cheapest do-it-yourself solutions out there, and they make great looking stuff. And you also see people who spend a ton of money investing in the best of the best, the absolute highest quality. And you look at it and you say, how did it turn out so bad? That happens all the time. And for whatever I talk about on this channel, when I'm talking about gear reviews or I'm talking about tips and advice on what cameras to film with or anything, just know that in the back of your mind, in the back of my mind, I'm talking about what's potentially possible, what that camera is capable of, not necessarily what it's actually going to give you. Just because a camera shoots 30 megapixels doesn't mean it's better than a camera that only shoots 18. Just because a camera can shoot 14 stops of dynamic range doesn't mean it's necessarily better than a camera that can only shoot 12 stops of dynamic range. It depends on whose hands that gear is in. And oftentimes with the cheaper gear, there are workarounds, there are sacrifices that need to be made, there's restrictions that you have to work within. But sometimes that can lead to very creative end results. And other times you have someone who invests in a $50,000 camera and they think that's all they need to do, and they forget about lighting, or they forget about quality audio or good actors or good direction or good movement. There's so many different pieces. And even if you have the best of the best, it can still go wrong because maybe the story is just garbage, or maybe the editor really messed it up. So there's so many different ways for things to go wrong. And anytime you get obsessed with the gear or the lenses and the camera bodies and even the lights and the audio and all this stuff, and you start worrying about the very specific technical details of those things, just try to remind yourself that at the end of the day, that extra stop of dynamic range or that extra stop on the lens aperture or the little bit more expensive filter that you put in front of the camera, sometimes that really matters. And if you're working on a project that needs the absolute pristine top of the line stuff and has the budget to afford it, then by all means, go nuts, have the best of the best, but don't neglect all the other things. And if you have to work with, $100 and a backpack, that's okay too. You can make that work. Just understand those restrictions and work around them and figure out a way to still achieve good quality results. One thing that's so obvious is from production to production, from project to project, the gear and the budget and all those things, they do matter in some contexts. It gives you more flexibility, gives you more ease of use, more simplicity in some cases, quicker, faster setups, or you don't have to light it as much, or you can shoot out a window without gelling or doing anything like that. But but that's only, I would say, maybe 50%. I'll give it 50% of it is the gear, and that other 50% is the talent and the skill that's involved in just using those tools. You can have a great lighting kit, the most expensive lighting kit, and a cheap camera, and that can be okay. It's just one of those things. The gear doesn't always matter. So anytime I'm talking about gear and focusing on technical specs of cameras or lenses or anything, that information is valuable. I'm not going to discredit it. Like I said, it's 50%. It's important stuff. And I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter at all, because you have people who do that. They say, oh, the gear doesn't matter at all. That's not true. It absolutely does. Sometimes better gear means better end results. But at that same hand, it doesn't mean that it's always going to get you better results. A really expensive camera can totally fall apart in the wrong hands or under the wrong setting if it's not the right tool for the job. And even though it's a cheap camera, it can still deliver wonderful results. It might not be the absolute best capable out there. It's not, a 4K camera isn't going to be an 8K camera, but that doesn't mean it has to be garbage either. So I just want to get that off my chest. It's a helpful reminder for me, as well as hopefully for you, because I see a lot of people who comment on my videos who always want to tell me that like I don't already know it. Maybe sometimes I do forget it, but it is helpful to have that reminder that it's not always about the gear. It is a little bit, 50%. I don't know. The percentages vary by project and by person, I'm sure. But let's at least say it's 50-50, even split between the gear mattering and the gear not mattering.